Hi, everyone. Welcome to my Thursday night Real Estate Investors Hangout. I'm so glad you all could make it tonight. Thank you for coming. I'd like to welcome all of my viewers from Facebook, my viewers from G+, and my viewers from Twitter, as well as any new viewers from Periscope. I just started broadcasting on Periscope this week, so those are some quick intro videos that I do to talk to people one-on-one and bring people kind of into my broadcast. Last week, we had this broadcast and the video wasn't recorded, so I'm doing it again this week. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to check the audio. If anyone cannot hear me, please into the chat. I have the chat open right now, so I'd love to hear from you. And also, I've got a poll posted there, and the poll tells you or asks you how many deals you've done, 1 to 3 wholesales, rentals, or flips, or more than 3 wholesales, rentals, or flips, or for those of you just starting, none so far, just starting out. So I'd love it if everyone can start on that and take a look. Could you type it in if you can hear me, please? I'd love to, and then tell us where you're hanging out from. I'd love to hear that as well. So I'm Janice Bell. I live in San Diego. I invest in various areas of the country. And so I'm familiar with out-of-state investing as well as flipping in-state. And I also have rentals in-state and out-of-state. So done it in different areas. Right now, Southern California is very expensive, and we're finding it a lot easier to flip houses in Northern California. So tonight, I'm going to talk to you about analyzing your deals. I'm going to do a wholesale deal as well as rental and flip deals. And I'm going to just go over while everyone's like piling into the webinar and just check my audio here. So if you hear some background noise, I'll mute it as soon as I can. Oh, there we go. So I muted it. I'm live. I can hear myself. I don't want to lose another recording. So I'm glad that's happening properly the way it's supposed to. I do have a great microphone here. I'll show you guys the mic. So the Blue Yeti, and that's just a great microphone. I guess it just was not on last week like it was supposed to be. So thank you all for coming. I'm going to analyze deals tonight. One from Northern California, one from Southern California, and one from Phoenix. Now, the Northern California one is a cheaper deal. It might be like deals you would do in the Midwest, although it's not the cheap deals in the Midwest. The house may look the same, but costs a little more because it's in California. And the one from Phoenix is kind of a medium price deal. So I want to do a little bit of something for everyone, and I'm going to walk you through the software step by step. Now, the link, if you're on G+, the link is in the comments below. And I will send out, I think I sent out a link if you were invited by email. I can also put a link right now. I will do that for you. I will put a link to the software in the chat. And that's something I can do right now. Okay, so software link. So you don't have to download it right now. It takes a little bit to get it set up. It works in Excel, and it works pretty well in Numbers. It leaves a few things out on the Mac, but you'll see that I'm doing it on a Mac, and you can see everything. Maybe a few little bells and whistles aren't there. So this is free software. It's called Rehab Valuator. So you can go ahead and download that. It works perfectly well free. If you decide to buy it, with the link, I will receive a little bit of an affiliate commission with that, but it'll cost you the same whether you buy it through my link or without my link. So I'm just full disclosure there for everyone. So I'm going to jump right in and start sharing my screen. And I've got my water here. It's very, very hot in Southern California. It's like 95 degrees. Soccer practice was canceled today, and even though I did a little run, but my daughter's soccer practice was canceled. So it's very hot, so stay hydrated. I'm going to jump into the screen share and jump right into the deals. I don't have a picture up. You can look on Facebook at wisewealthuniversity.com like this, and you'll be able to see a picture of a house that I had set up, one of the houses that I'm going to talk about today. So let me go to screen share right away. And if you can't see it, put comments in. I'd love to hear from you in the chat. And again, if you're just joining, go ahead and fill in the poll. If you are joining later from YouTube, you won't be able to see the polls and pop-ins. They don't show up on YouTube. It's only in the actual webinar replay that they show up. So, all right, so this is Rehab Valuator. I am running it in numbers on a Mac. So I hope everyone can see that. So let's go ahead. I'm going to look at scenario of property number 1 in Northern California, a scenario of property number 2 in Southern California, and property number 3 is in Phoenix, Arizona. So I'll try to make this bigger just by zooming in and out. And if you can't see it, just remind me, because when we go to the next page, I'm going to have to zoom it back out again. But this does make it bigger for everyone. All right. So let's start with property number 1. So you can type all of these things in. This is an Excel spreadsheet, and Daniel just made it look very clean and pretty. And so if you're going to set up one of these offers, so let's pretend you found a deal and you needed to calculate your maximum offer. So say you found it from a homeowner, you did a nice letter campaign, and the homeowner wants $75,000. You do your comps and you check and figure out that your after repaired value would be $130,000. Now, for the purposes of calculating this, let's use $70,000 as the maximum percentage of ARV that we would use. And that's very standard for the cheaper deals. You'll notice in a later deal, I'll go a little bit higher. Okay, so $20,000 in your repairs is the estimate that you've made, and you've talked to the homeowner, you've looked at it yourself. Your closing costs are going to be about 2% for the purchase. If you're wholesaling this, that's what it'll cost your buyer. The holding costs during the fix-up would be about $1,000, and that's the fix-up for the wholesale buyer. In this scenario, we are going to wholesale this deal. So our wholesale profit is going to be $5,000, and the software calculates that your maximum offer is going to be $63,600. So what you're going to need to do is negotiate with your buyer, let them know how much the rehab costs are, and that really, in order for your buyer or you to make a profit, you're going to have to get the house under $65,000. Okay, so here's the cost basis for the end buyer, and this is really nice when you have some end buyers, because you know their numbers as well, and you can explain to them what you're doing, and you can understand where they're coming from. So their cost basis between rehab, holding costs, and everything is going to be $91,000. If they keep it as a rental, their projected monthly income, $1,200, and their projected monthly expenses are $300. Now, where do I get those numbers from? Let's go over here. Let's go to closing costs. Okay, so we've got the closing costs as $1,500, but there's various closing costs that you can put in to this deal. Holding costs during rehab, we have several different amounts, and utilities and taxes and things like that. And so we've had a total lump sum of $1,000 for the holding costs. Closing costs, $1,500. Operating income. Okay, in this case, we're going to look at rent as $900. And so this is where we get, you know, all of the numbers from. Oh, and operating expenses, we do have those. These are set up for various, this is going to be set up for the cheaper deal. And as I go through these, I'm going to change these so that repairs and maintenance and taxes is going to be higher when you buy a more expensive deal. Okay, so you can use the tabs at the top to go through all of this. Now, so what's going to happen is that's where I got those numbers from. There's my offer calculator. And so the projected monthly expenses are $300. Income actually on this one is $1,200. That's what the rent would be because we're in Northern California. When I finished doing this earlier, when I set it up, I still had plugged in the rent of $900 in the operating expenses. But for this one, we're going to keep it at $1,200. I'd done these numbers previously, so I know what they are. So let's go to our rehab and flip or hold analysis. And here I have to make everything a little bit smaller. Okay, our assumptions are the purchase price. So we have to go back here and just kind of grab that purchase price. We're not going to use 82. We're going to use this one. Okay, you can see that was the number I finished up with. I just want to copy it, bring it over here. Copy this number here. Makes it very hard to copy because of the, I think I'll just type it in, 63,600. There we go. 63,600. All right, holding costs, closing costs, about the same. It's an all cash offer. Okay, so we're not going to do anything with financing. And let's go over here. The rehab budget is $20,000. The after repair value on this property is $130,000. Projected rehab period is 2 months. I don't have that in there, but. And months to complete the rehab, 2 months. So the cash required over the lifetime of the project, including your holding costs with 2 months, would be $87,000. That is 67% of the ARV, so we're nicely under the 70%, which is where we want to be. Projected resale, I still have to change this one. So you have to change it to suit your deal. I just had the previous deal plugged in there. So your projected profit on this deal, the projected profit for your wholesale buyer would be $33,000. Okay, that's after you have taken your $5,000 profit and sold it to them. They rehab it for $20,000, they sell it for $130,000. That's how much it cost them to get going. And they paid 7% for the cost of the sale. They made $33,000 on it, so they did a really great job. They over a 4-month period. So their return on their cash invested is a 38% return because you're getting $33,000 back on the $87,000 you put into the deal. If you do that, if you take 4 months and multiply by 3, your annualized rate of return is 115%. So that's how much you're making on your money. If you were to close a deal one day and roll that money back into another deal the very next day, that's what you would make. So down here you can see that half of the sale proceeds for the purchase price, 15% for the rehab, and 26% for the profit. And of course, 7% goes to listing and title insurance and all that good stuff. So that is our first deal. That is a Northern California deal. We are flipping houses in Sacramento. You may have seen some of these pictures. I post them on Twitter in my tweets when I I'm setting up this webinar. So if you go back to Pink Professor, you'll see a couple of the pictures of houses that we can buy up there. The one in particular that we just bought recently for this exact price. Let me see if it goes over to, all right. And it will give us a summary report of everything that we just talked about. So here's your summary report of a flip. All right, and now I'm going to go back and analyze it as a refi, as a rent and refi. Same deal, same house. All right, let's move over this way a little bit. That was our flip. Here's our refi analysis. We got to change our after repair value now. Okay. Same cost. If your buyer then was to refi at 75% of the appraised value, got a mortgage rate of 5%, because remember, he's an investor, he or she, and it's going to cost a little more than it does for your average homeowner to get a loan. It's probably 1 point above what they normally would qualify for. Refi points, I put that in there, miscellaneous costs. I put in the rent of $900 a month. And I think that would be a Phoenix rent. It's pulling it from the operating income. Let's change that. Let's change that to $1,200 we would get in Northern California. And as you'll see, that'll change this cost here. So here's the rent. And minus my expenses, here's my net operating income for the month. My new mortgage payment will be $523 a month based on refinancing at 75% of the $130. Okay. So the cash out at the refi, I will be taking $94,000 out, which will pay off the $87,000 that I already spent, and I actually make a profit at the refi, or your retail buyer will make a profit at the refi of $7,203. If you did the deal yourself and you didn't wholesale it, you can add in that $5,000 that we talked about earlier on the wholesale deal. Your return on investment for your down payment would be 24%. For your down payment cash invested, 24%. And after the refi, the original money tied up would be $0. You still have $32,000 in equity left in the property, and you have a monthly cash flow of $487,000, and that's basically the rent minus the expenses minus your monthly mortgage payment, and the expenses include taxes and insurance. Cash on cash return doesn't mean too much here because it's infinite, because you have $0 money tied up in the refi. So again, you're going to have a nice, your wholesale buyer would get a profit of $7,000 if they rehabbed it and refinanced it, and you would get a profit of $7,000 plus the original $5,000 if you did not wholesale it and you kept it and did the exact same thing. The debt coverage ratio on your new loan is 1.93. That's a number banks like to use. There's no cash tied up. And the cap rate of the property based on the after repair value is a little bit over 9%. So that's a really nice cap rate for a great rental. Okay, your cap rate is based on price and the yearly rental income that you get as a percentage of the money that you first put in to the property. It's the yearly rent in relationship to what you paid for it. So we'll go over here and look at our yearly rent, $14,000. But it's really yearly rent minus expenses, so you'd have to calculate that as well. All right, so let's go back and do another deal. All right, we're 1 down, 2 to go. Let me zoom back in for you. All right, let's look at property number 2. Everybody getting this? And anyone have any questions? Post those in the chat. All right. I'm going to do got the poll going now that a lot of people have come in. I'm just going to go ahead and display the offer for my private lenders ebook. And this ebook is something you can download with that link. If you're watching later on the YouTube replay or you're watching on G+, you can go to wisewealthuniversity.com/PV lending and download the book there. So P for private and PV for private, and then lending. So wisewealthuniversity.com/PV lending. Go ahead and grab the ebook, and I hope you enjoy it. It has 4 emails that come after the ebook that teach you about how to use the book and to develop your own private lenders, which are very important in these scenarios. So you really don't have to go to the bank once you get the private lender. All right, let's go to property number 2. Property number 2, I'm going to talk about a Southern California deal. I'm not going to call it a wholesale. Let's just call it a rehab and flip. You would not want to keep this as a rental. You just have too much money invested in it for too little rent. And that's just how Southern California is, as well as New York and San Francisco and a few of the other big cities. All right, so your after repair value for houses in that neighborhood are about $500,000. That is kind of the average around here. There's very few things for less than that. I did find a deal last week when I was setting this up for around $350,000. That's what they were asking. So that's kind of the deal prices right now. When we were flipping here earlier, a few years ago, we were paying like $220,000, selling in the $300,000 and $400,000 range, or upper $300,000 and $400,000 range. All right, so $500,000. I'm going to go with 80% of the ARV is the maximum I'd want to spend, and it's going to cost me about $60,000 to make this thing beautiful so I can flip it. My closing costs for purchase will be 2%, and my holding costs about $1,000 a month. That makes my maximum offer of $332,000. All right, and I'm going to go back over and just check on all the other expenses. So my closing costs, $1,500, holding costs during rehab about $1,000 a month. It's probably a little more based on taxes costing a little more. Operating income, I would be able to rent this for $2,100. And my operating expenses, the taxes will be higher based on the price, and I'm going to put $300 a month for the taxes. In California, our taxes are based on 1% of the purchase price, and so when the purchase price is higher, we pay more. That's just how it works out. All right, so back to our analysis. So our projected monthly income, $2,100, our monthly expenses, $500, and our cost basis is going to be $400,000, and our cap rate is going to be 4.8%, and that's actually a good cap rate for this area. All right, so let's go over to our rehab and hold analysis for this property. We'll have to change this up a little. Here we go. All right, so let's find out what our purchase price was. $332,000. Definitely got to change that. that off. Okay, so that's what we're going to pay for it. We're not going to finance it. We have our own private lenders. It's going to be all cash. Let's look at our rehab budget. We're going to put in $60,000. I would say 3 months to work on it. 90 days. Put it on the market, sell it. Our total capital needed is $394,000, so that's close to 400. Withholding costs, it is the cash required is around 400,000. The percentage. Oh, I see. I forgot to change the after repair value here. Let's get that back up to 500,000, just like it is in Southern California. And our projected retail value here. Got to do the same thing. All right. Okay, that makes sense. So your after repair value is 500,000. You put 60,000 in. It took you 3 months to do it, 2 months to sell. That's a pretty good average, about 5 months in and out. Cash required about 400,000 to do the deal. It's 81% of the ARV, and I projected let's not go above 80%, so we're really close there. Projected resale price 500,000 with a 7% sale price. Your projected profit on this deal is $62,000. It's still worth doing. It's just not a good thing to hold as a rental. Your return on your cash invested is about 15%. If you do a couple of these a year and you start one as soon as you finish the other one, your annualized return on investment for the cash you put in will be 37%. So you do see where the other one was close to 90 to 100. You do see that when your purchase price increases in relationship to the money you have to put in, your annualized return goes down. You still make a good profit, but you have to come up with a lot more cash. So it's how you want to invest your cash, and you just should be aware of the return you're getting for the cash you invested. Now I'll go over here and show you what it would be like if you try to keep this as a rental. Let's say you put in 60,000. I do know that on one of our flips, the person who bought it kept it as a rental. So people do it. And then after you used cash to do this whole thing, you could refi at 70% with a 5% interest rate on your mortgage. Over a 30-year period, you'd pay a couple points. Here's the rent that you were going to get, the $2,100, and there's your expenses, although I thought your monthly expenses were going to be about $5. Let's go over and check that. Operating expenses, $390 a month. Okay. Probably a little more than I only have insurance and repairs because you've almost fixed up everything there is. You might have to put in something for landscape, and you wouldn't pay any utilities. So $390 a month. We're good. We're good. Let's go back to that analysis. Okay. So you'd have a net operating income of $1,700, but your mortgage payment would be $2,000. So your mortgage payment is going to be more than what you make on the property. You'd refi out $375,000, and your cash out at the refi would be $363,000. So you wouldn't make any profit. You would have left $37,000 tied up in the property, and you'd have $125,000 in equity left. Your cash flow would be negative $300 a month, and your cash on cash return pre-tax would be a minus 10%. So the cash return, because you'd have to add money every month to cover this mortgage, because the rent doesn't cover it and doesn't cover the taxes and insurance, your cash on cash return is negative. So basically you're just plowing money into this every month. It's basically called feeding the pig. Now, taking out the fact that you pay interest on the money, if you just looked at the cap rate based on the ARV, what the house is worth, $500,000, and the rent that you get, your cap rate is about 4%. So if you're an all cash buyer and you want to keep all your cash in, this is the return you're getting on your cash. You're going to get 4%. If you have a loan, it's not going to work because your loan rate is higher than the cap rate that you have. And that's where all the money goes. It goes into this mortgage payment. All right, quick scenario. Let's go just check the final report. It's way over here. Summary. Your rehab cost $60,000. Let's like zoom it way in here. $332,000 purchase price. You got holding costs and financing costs, and your total project cost is $402. Committed to the project. You resell it for $500,000. That's your cost of the sale, because you have to pay 7% for title insurance, just the realtor listing, even if you only give them 3% and you list it with a flat fee listing. But you will make $62,000 on your flip. So it is possible. Return on investment, 15%. Anyway, so that is what would happen. And then, of course, the rent refi I just went through, and it doesn't really work. So I wouldn't advise anyone doing it. So people say they love Southern California, but you're really not going to flip here. I mean, you're not going to keep things as a rental. All right, let's go to a Phoenix deal. So you can live in Southern California and flip in Phoenix. It's basically a 6-hour drive away. So here's an example of a deal you could do in Phoenix. Say the after repair value is $150,000. Someone maybe has a house listed for $90,000. You're going to find out what your maximum offer is. You're still only going to offer 70% in the lower price market. Here you do 80% because you've got a little bit more margin to play with because the numbers are so big. A lot of the gurus don't teach this because they live in markets where these are the price ranges, so they just don't deal with this. You're going to put in $20,000. Your closing costs are 2%. Your holding costs again are $1,000, and your maximum offer is going to be $82,000. So I'm going to go over and put that into our analysis. $82,000. Let's go back. I'm going to make this bigger again. All right, so we're going to put $82,000 in here. Appreciate you guys watching me do this on the fly. It's really the only way to teach it. 82,000. That's your offer. Well, I ended up with 83. I think I meant to put 82. But close enough. Always have to remember how Excel works. There we go. All right, and we're going to put in $20,000 for our repairs, like we did in Northern California. This is going to be $150, and that is our after repair value, what we expect to sell it for. I'm going to have to put that number down here. So you see there's a couple places where you have to change it. If you didn't have 3 scenarios and you only wanted to do 1 scenario, you could just link those numbers up so you wouldn't have to go back and forth and change them. All right, so let's go back and look at our offer calculator. Oh, and what kind of rent would be? We would only get about $900 for the rent for this house. Well, let's go with $950. It's a little bit nicer. We have one very similar. All right, and then operating expenses, We're going to put those taxes back down low again. Holding, closing costs, and let's go back to our offer. Okay, so 82,000 is our offer. We'll do our analysis here. 82,000, 1,500 in closing, and 1,000 a month in holding costs. Exit strategy. You can keep this or flip it as a rental, either one. 20,000 in repair, and I have no wholesale price in here because you're going to keep it yourself. Your after repair value is 150,000. This is an easier rehab. Let's get it done in 2 months. 2 months to sell. Your cash required over the life of the project for the 4 months you have it is 106,000. Your projected resale is 150, and your ARV comes out to 71%, which is right where we want to be. Your costs during the sale for title insurance and escrow fees, and your cost to the realtor to list it are 7%, and that's kind of assuming that you're going to list it yourself and you're just going to pay buyer's agents to bring people in. Your projected profit is 33,000, so it's a nice profit, and you put in a lot less money. You didn't put in 400,000 or 400,000 like you did in California to do the deal. So for putting in 100,000, you still made 30%, $33,000. Your ROI is 31%, and annualized, that's 4 months. You could do maybe 3 of those a year with the same money if you had them lined up right. And your annualized return on that money would be 94%. So you're doubling your money every time you do it, every year. All right, so here's a look at 55%. Make it bigger there. Is purchase price. The rehab's 13, and your profit is 22% of the proceeds from the sale, 7% to the cost of the sale. All right, let's slide it over. So what if you kept this as a rental? The rehab budget, again, was 20,000. After repair value, 150. I said the rent was 950. We already changed that. We changed the taxes. Again, it cost you 106 to get into the deal, 106K. If you refied it for 75% at a 5% mortgage rate, and you did it for 30 years, and you had a few points to pay up front because you're an investor, you're going to pay something. And your rent was $950. These are your monthly expenses. So you have a net operating income. That's NOI. That's the net operating income. It's the rent minus the normal expenses. It does not include the mortgage. So this is net operating income, NOI. It's a term that's used in real estate quite a lot. So if you see it, just remember it's monthly rent minus the monthly expenses that you can't get out of, taxes and insurance. Now, everyone's credit situation is different. So that's why the mortgage payment is not part of NOI, because the NOI is something that's based on the property, whereas the mortgage payment is based on how the individual owner funds that deal, whether they refinance, if they have good credit, bad credit, it can change. So your new mortgage payment, based on these assumptions, is going to be $600 a month. Your refi loan is $112,000, so you get out $109,000 when you refinance, and you actually make a profit on the refi. And I used to do a lot of deals like this in Detroit, where when I refied, I got money back. I got all the money back I put in plus a profit. So your profit here is about $3,000. Sorry, whenever I touch the mouse, sometimes it does that. Okay. Your return on an investment, ROI, on your down payment or your cash investment, But because you took out all your profit, there's no money tied up in the refi. You have $37,000 in equity left. So this is the 8% on your cash invested here. Your cash flow is $150 a month, but your cash on cash return pre-tax is infinite because you have zero into it. So $150 a month based on zero into it gives you an infinite cash on cash return, which is a percentage of this divided by that. All right, your debt coverage ratio is nice and low, 1.26. Banks like to see that. There's no cash tied up to pay back. And your cap rate is based on the cost of the property divided by the yearly rent. So your cap rate on this property is, sorry, not the cost of the property, the ARV of the property. Your cap rate on this property is 6%. Let's jump over to one last thing here, our summary report. So for this deal, 82,000, 20,000 in rehab. Those are our holding costs, 106 into it. Projected resale of 150,000. Cost of the sale about 10,000, and your profit again 33,000. Your ROI is 31%, and your annualized return on investment is 94. Those numbers came right from this deal over here. Okay, so that is your Phoenix deal. That's your summary report, and that shows you what would happen if you flipped it. This shows what would happen if you rented it out. Now these numbers are coming from the other, so I don't have to change them at all. You cash it out if you refi, you make some money. So this is a summary of, do I flip it? Do I rent it? And that's why we give these side by side, flipping versus renting. You could see in California, you made money on the flip, you didn't make money on the rental. On the Northern California or the cheaper deal, some of the Midwest deals, Florida deals, the Carolinas, that would work perfectly there. This Phoenix deal is more like a mid-priced deal, and the California deal is like expensive cities that some of you all live in. So anyway, that is, I'm going to check the chat. I don't see that anybody had any questions. If you have any questions about what I talked about, go ahead and type those into the chat. I'll just check the room and see who's here viewing. I know we had a few people register and come in a little bit late. So that's our summary of how to analyze the deal. And I put the link is in the chat. It's also on the G+ in the comments. And it's also on my Wise Wealth University Facebook page. So you can go to Facebook, Wise Wealth University, and I put a link to the software there. The software is free. You can use it in any of your deals that you want. Again, if you want to get inexpensive money to do your deals, download my Finding Private Lenders ebook. It's right here in the webinar on the right-hand side, and it's also on my website, wisewealthuniversity.com/PV lending. And there's also a link to it. If you go to some of the blog posts, you'll see a link to that. So I appreciate everyone for coming tonight. Thank you all for joining me and watching the broadcast. And thank you to all the replay viewers who may be watching on Facebook, YouTube, and some of the Twitter links later. So anyway, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. I'm going to finish up screen. Thank you all for coming. Anyway, I will be doing another hangout next week. I'm interviewing a few new people who are getting into the real estate market, and they're going to be having some great tips to share with you. So I want to thank everyone for joining me tonight, and I'm going to do my video at the end If you're on YouTube, I probably cut that off because it doesn't really show up. So thank you all for coming. And if there aren't any more questions, I'm going to sign off for tonight. Have a great weekend and stay cool. Drink a lot of ice water. All right. Good night, everyone.